Were you put off by Metal Slug 2 slowdowns? Were you blindsided by the alien reveal? Do you think the aliens could have had a bigger presence in-game? Then look no further than Metal Slug X. Metal Slug X is the updated version of Metal Slug 2 released in 1999. This version tackles most of the issues present in MS2, aiming for an improved experience overall. In fact, this is the main selling point of this version. SNK was well aware about the issues and they wanted to fix it. They achieved this by using what would be the engine for Metal Slug 3. And if you can't tell from the footage on screen, things are running a bit more smoothly. That's not to say MS2 is a bad game. Hell, it started the craziness that we now expect in our Metal Slug games. It's just that the issues were apparent. For this video, I'll be using the PS1 version because I want to talk about the extra game modes, and because I'm a PS1 shill. So there are two main points I want to bring up for this video. First is that Metal Slug X is a very good update to the original game. It feels familiar, but not entirely different. It's not an exact copy of MS2 flaws and all, but it's not an entirely new game. I know this sounds pretty weird considering it's supposed to be Metal Slug 2 but better, and technically it is. But it just does enough that it's able to set itself apart from its older brother without royally messing up. And just to clarify, I'm not even talking about the extra stuff in the PS1 port. The best way I can put it is that whatever MSX does different does not affect gameplay in a major way, but rather supplements what is already there. The second point is that, believe it or not, Metal Slug X is crazier than 2. Amazing, I know. The thing is, MSX doubles down on almost everything 2 brought to the table. In my previous video, please go watch it, shameless plug, I said that Metal Slug 2 was the start of everything we come to know and love about the Metal Slug series, excluding the big bosses and great graphics. It was 2 that introduced tongue-in-cheek humor and a less serious and more outlandish take on war. Metal Slug X doubles down on that. There are things introduced or improved in this game that you wouldn't even bother realizing it's crazy and weird. Blends in so well that you start to think, yeah, this is normal. Yep, this is Metal Slug. These 2 points all hinge on one thing, and it's the changes or additions done in Metal Slug X. As I mentioned earlier, the changes aren't big. They don't make your knowledge of MS2 completely useless. But these changes are so prevalent as early as stage 1 that they stack and they let their presence be known. First thing you'll probably notice is that most stages are done in a different time of day, or at least sport a different color palette. For example, stage 1 is now at night and stage 2 is more green than purple. Not a huge change, but I think they did this to give identity to Metal Slug X, in turn separating it from Metal Slug 2. Aliens are shown very early in the game, like stage 1 early. They also serve as normal enemies in some stages now, giving the aliens a bigger presence and role in the grand scheme of things. I think this was done to deal with the alien reveal that was only in stage 6 in the previous game. Weapons have been expanded, by a lot. Weapons from before now have a stronger version indicated by the pulsing letter in their pickup icon. This variant deals more damage and has a stronger visual look. If you think the firepower is not enough to shit on the Geneva Convention, then the new weapons might convince you to do it in style. There are 5 new weapons in Metal Slug X. There's the Iron Lizard, which is a cartoony looking wheeled missile that moves along the ground. The Enemy Chaser, which homes in on enemies at random. The Drop Shot, which are bouncing cannonballs good against covered infantry. The Super Grenade, which can only be used in combat school. Huh. And Stone, which is a grenade type that is good for dealing massive damage at single targets. If you can tell by now, these weapons are unique, outlandish. What the fuck, why am I using a rock? Sadly, there are no new vehicles, but at least we have a faster moving version of the Metal Slug called the Golden Metal Slug. There are generally more items in the game. This is more evident with the food items, which used to be stage 4 only. This means there are now more chances of the player being fat, and if you don't know, being fat in this game means more firepower. Music has been slightly remixed or altered to sound cleaner and better. Personally, I can't tell the difference. However, do note that for the PS1 port, they decided not to just use the music from the arcade version, but instead utilize the sound chip on the console. This sadly results in a lesser sound quality. Enemy placements has been rearranged and enemy count has been changed, resulting in a more balanced difficulty. This is more obvious with stage 6 where there is actual breathing room now. That said, I think the perception in the difficulty of this game can vary per player. I personally find this game to be easier than 2, but then again, this was my first Metal Slug game and I'm more familiar with it. So take what I said with a huge grain of salt. That said, a special mention to the Cassie, which was originally stage 1's boss. It's been demoted to a mini-boss in stage 4. Why did they did this? I don't know. I honestly thought the Cassie was a good first boss. It's not as disappointing as Shu and Karn, but then again, you can't get any more boring than just 2 tanks. Now, despite all these changes, the other stuff in-game is nearly the same. You still choose from 4 characters, there are still 6 stages, and it's still about trying to stop the Morden Alien Alliance. Yes, he still gets betrayed, and we still get to see that sweet Independence Day reference. So, let's talk about what the PS1 version does. The first thing I want to talk about is the controls. Holy shit, they are stiff. A friend of mine told me since the first Metal Slug video that the controls are actually stiff and weird and not as good as I said it was. That this is the case in all PS1 Metal Slug titles. I honestly thought it wasn't that bad in the first game and thought that's gonna be the same for Metal Slug X. I'm a f***ing idiot. The controls feel weird. It's like you're experiencing input lag or dropping inputs even though you're sure you pressed the button. And don't get me started on controlling the vehicles. I've accidentally made them do the suicide move when I didn't plan to. Another thing I want to mention are the new sprites for the menus. After beating arcade mode, you finally get a stage select screen, meaning we can start the game at any level now. It has some really cool art that, to some extent, tells you what to expect in this stage. And speaking of stages, remember how in the first Metal Slug game there's in-stage loading that just pauses you? Well, in Metal Slug X, it's handled way better now. Instead of suddenly breaking the flow of gameplay, we now get a proper loading screen with smooth transitions. With that done, let's talk about the extra stuff. Combat School and another mission returns, being introduced back in the PS1 port of the first Metal Slug. Combat School plays similarly to back then. You still have to rise through the ranks while impressing your instructor. This time though, we have the new instructor Margaret Southwood taking over for Sophia Greenville. You rise through the ranks by either doing pinpoint runs, which is basically speedrunning a stage, or survival runs where you have to beat the game in 1 life. And like last time, reaching 1,000 points puts you in Super Devil status. Oh, and if you press square while Combat School is loading, you can talk to Margaret. But we all know who the true waifu is. Another mission has been improved. Back then, it was a series of 3 minigames and that's about it. This time is a collection of challenges with varying objectives. These could range from reaching the end of a challenge while unarmed or defeating enemies with a certain weapon. They serve as a good way to teach a player of how certain in-game mechanics work. There are a total of 20 missions, but 10 are immediately available. You still have to finish arcade mode at least once to unlock this, and beating all challenges rewards you with a secret credit scene and more art in the art gallery. Metal Slug X is a wonderful game and an improvement done right. While some people think that Metal Slug 2 is a better game, I still think X is worth checking out because it has its own identity even without the extra stuff the PS1 version introduces. And let's not forget that this version of the game pushes the craziness, the humor, the uniqueness that we have expected and seen from our Metal Slug games. You should obviously get this game because it's a classic. However, I can only advise people to get the PS1 version if you really want to experience the extras it has. I honestly think you are better off getting the Metal Slug Anthology, which is Metal Slug 1 to 6 in a single package, or getting the game on current gen consoles or on the PC. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi there! If you like the content, please consider subscribing. If you want to hear my thoughts on PS1 games or for channel updates, please follow me on Twitter at KenAthomos. There's also a Ko-fi account if this video convinces you to further support the channel. However, you just watching and staying is already a big deal. So thank you. Take care!